The Supreme Court just issued a ruling that changes gun laws across every single state in America. Not just blue states, not just red states, everywhere. Millions of law-abiding citizens now have expanded rights, and many don't even realize it yet. Here's exactly what happened, why it matters, and how it affects you. The case is New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruen, decided June 23, 2022, by the United States Supreme Court. The ruling came down 6-3, with Justice Clarence Thomas writing the majority opinion. This decision didn't just impact New York, it sent shockwaves through every state with restrictive gun permitting systems. For over a century, several states ran under a may issue framework. That meant a government official could approve or deny your concealed carry permit based on subjective criteria. You had to prove a special need beyond simply wanting to defend yourself. New York's Sullivan Law is the most well-known example. Ordinary citizens were routinely denied because their fear or threat wasn't deemed serious enough. California, New Jersey, Maryland, Massachusetts, and Hawaii ran similar systems. Over 100 million Americans were affected. Here's how it worked in practice. You're a law-abiding adult, clean record, responsible citizen. You apply for a concealed carry permit. An official you've never met decides whether your personal safety concerns are valid. General self-defense? Not enough. You're denied, not because of criminal behavior, mental health issues, or a history of unsafe conduct, but because a bureaucrat arbitrarily decided you weren't special enough. Celebrities or politically connected people might get approval, but ordinary citizens? Denied. Bruen destroyed that system. May issue permits are unconstitutional. The Supreme Court ruled that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to carry a handgun outside the home for self-defense. Law-abiding adults cannot be forced to justify why they want to exercise that right. Rights aren't privileges. They exist automatically. States can regulate how you exercise them, but they cannot demand you prove why you deserve them. The ruling replaces may issue with shall issue. If you meet the legal criteria, age, criminal background, mental health requirements, the state must issue the permit. No subjective denials, no bureaucratic whim. Background checks, fingerprinting, safety courses, and fees are still allowed, but denial based on personal judgment is gone. Bruen also introduced a radical change in how courts evaluate gun laws. Previously, courts used intermediate scrutiny, where the government only needed to show a law was reasonably related to public safety. Now the text history tradition test applies. States must prove any gun regulation is consistent with historical firearm laws from the founding era and the post-Civil War period. If a modern law doesn't have a historical analog, it's unconstitutional. This standard is challenging bans on assault weapons, magazine limits, waiting periods, licensing schemes, and red flag laws. Some will survive, many won't. Let's break it down state by state. New York. Before Bruen, concealed carry permits were extremely rare. Bruen eliminated the proper cause requirement, but the state responded with new restrictions, sensitive locations, mandatory training, interviews, and social media checks. Legal challenges are ongoing, but the fundamental right is now established. California. Good cause requirements are gone. Urban counties now follow shall issue, but the state expanded sensitive locations where carrying is prohibited. Schools, government buildings, parks, transit, bars, hospitals, stadiums. Federal courts are reviewing some of these changes. New Jersey. The justifiable need standard was eliminated. Permit issuance surged from hundreds per year to thousands. Citizens who were previously denied can now get permits if they meet standard requirements. Maryland. Good and substantial reason requirements were removed. Applications increased dramatically. Massachusetts. Police chiefs lost wide discretionary powers. Permits are now issued more consistently across towns. Hawaii. Geographic isolation arguments were rejected. Shall issue is now the standard for all law-abiding adults. Here's how Bruen changes real lives. A nurse in Los Angeles walks to her car at 2 a.m. in a parking structure. Under the old California system, 2 incidents in a parking lot aren't enough to convince a sheriff that her fear is special. Denied. Under Bruen, she completes the training, passes her background check, and obtains a permit. Her right to self-defense is now recognized constitutionally. A convenience store owner in Newark, New Jersey, with documented robberies can now obtain a permit without bureaucratic denial. The past justifiable need standard no longer blocks ordinary citizens from protecting themselves and their employees. A parent in Hawaii can carry a firearm to protect their children even without past threats or a dangerous occupation. The ocean doesn't change the Constitution. The Second Amendment applies equally in Hawaii as in Texas or Florida. Permit applications surged immediately in every former May issue state. States that previously issued hundreds of permits per year are now issuing thousands. Rights expanded overnight. But Bruen doesn't give unlimited freedom. You still need a permit where your state requires one. Bruen only prevents arbitrary denial, not the permit requirement itself. Don't start carrying without following state laws. Gun-free or sensitive locations still exist. Schools, government buildings, and other areas remain off-limits. Some states expanded these zones aggressively after Bruin. Always check before carrying. Background checks and training remain mandatory. The court allows these vetting procedures. You are not exempt. The government just cannot ignore your rights. Some states attempted to circumvent Bruin by redefining sensitive places, requiring in-person interviews, social media audits, and broader character checks. Gun rights groups have challenged many of these expansions in federal court. The historical test introduced by Bruin gives gun owners a strong legal basis to strike down arbitrary or overly broad restrictions. The broader legal impact is profound. Courts must now view gun regulations through the lens of history. If the founders wouldn't recognize a restriction as legitimate, it has no place today. This impacts assault weapon bans, magazine capacity limits, waiting periods, licensing schemes, red flag laws. Some laws will survive historical scrutiny, but many modern restrictions are now vulnerable. This makes defending gun rights easier and challenging restrictive laws harder for states. Practical examples to illustrate. Hospital worker in Los Angeles, previously denied permit despite documented incidents, now automatically eligible if requirements are met. Store owner in Newark, New Jersey, documented robberies previously insufficient under justifiable need, now fully protected by Bruin. Hawaii parent, previously denied for lack of threats, now recognized under the Second Amendment. States like New York and California tried emergency legislation after Bruin. They reclassified almost every public space as a sensitive location and expanded character requirements. Courts are reviewing these measures, but Bruin strengthens the gun owner's position. 3 common myths. Myth 1. Bruin allows permitless carry everywhere. Wrong. Most states still require permits. Bruin only eliminates arbitrary denials. Follow state laws. Myth 2. All gun-free zones are unconstitutional. Wrong. Schools, government buildings, and other sensitive places remain off-limits. Some expansions are being challenged but still active. Myth 3. Background checks and training requirements are gone. Wrong. States can still require checks and courses. Bruin doesn't remove these obligations. Key takeaways. May issue systems are gone. Your right to carry for self-defense is protected. Shall issue is now the constitutional standard. Meet the requirements, and the state must issue the permit. Courts now evaluate gun laws using the historical tradition test, making arbitrary restrictions much harder to defend. Bruin doesn't eliminate permits or sensitive locations, but it prevents states from using subjective denial. Law-abiding citizens now have stronger, more consistent access to their Second Amendment rights. For law-abiding Americans, this is not theoretical. It immediately affects your ability to protect yourself, your family, and your property. Permits, training, and background checks remain, but the era of arbitrary bureaucratic denial is over. Rights are no longer a gift. They are recognized and enforceable. In summary, Bruin removes subjective government gatekeeping, establishes shall issue nationwide for law-abiding citizens, and shifts legal evaluation to strict historical scrutiny. Rights have expanded dramatically, but responsible compliance with state laws remains essential. Your Second Amendment protections are stronger today than they were yesterday. Stay informed. Follow your state's updated rules, and understand where you can legally carry. The Supreme Court made clear, arbitrary denial of constitutional rights has no place in modern America.